Okay, so in our previous session, what we have actually seen is what is design validation process, what is the different methods to validate a design. So namely, we have seen what is analytical method and numerical method and experimental method. And after that, we have seen what is the workflow of CAE. So today, let us discuss about what is the main difference between analytical method and numerical method through an example. So before that, I am Ranjit, so you are watching Simulation Tech. Okay, let's get into the topic. So we need to differentiate between that analytical method and numerical method. For that, I have taken an example. So it's an axial tensile bar problem. This problem statement comes under strength of material. So or else you can say solid mechanics, right? You already see that. So it's a step bar. So which is having one fixed support at one end. So namely, it's called as a cantilever beam. So at the another end, having an load of P, so its length is L, and that area 1 and area 2 is already given. So they have given the P value and A1, A2, A3, not A3, so A2. So they have given that L, and what is E? So it is called Young's modulus. So they have also given that Young's modulus. So instead of giving that which material it is, they have actually given the value of Young's modulus directly. And they don't mention any cross section, so they said that the cross section may be anything. They have actually given that area directly, so we don't need to find that area, right? So we will move on to that first, right? Let's get into that analytical method. So we actually know that what is stress. So stresses means force upon area. So we already know that stress means of P by A, right? And what is strain means dl by L, right? So in this problem statement, actually what I need to find is, I need to find that how much bar has to be tensile. So what is the change in length? DL. So I need DL, and due to that particular force P, how much stress is actually formed. So that is also I need. So I need that stress value as well as the change in length value. This is my to find, right? So we know that stress is P by A and strain is D by L. So we have the data of P and A and L, but we don't know about DL, right? Okay, let's see how to solve this problem. And we already know that what is the relation between stress and strain. You already probably know about Hooke's law, right? Hooke's law. What is Hooke's law? Stress is directly proportional to strain within elastic limit. So when we plot a graph between stress and strain, so actually it looks like this. So it should be ended from here. So we have A point, B point, C point, and D point. So D is called a fracture, and A is called starting, and B is called ultimate and a tensile point. So in our later session, we will discuss about that particular curve. So what is the relation between stress and strain? So we will clearly explain in our upcoming session, right? So, and by relating this to formula, we can have a formula for Young's modulus E. So E is equal to stress divided by strain. So by substituting this formulas in this equation, so we can easily get P by A into L by DL, right? Next, I needed this DL, so because I need how much it actually elongated, right? So I need that. So for that, what I will do is accept this value. I can move all the variables to one side. So DL is equal to PL divided by AE. Let's substitute that all the known values. So because we know the entire values, right? P, L, E, and D. Okay, not D, so it's E, right? So 200, 100, 200 into 200, 2, and 10 to the power of 5. So A is 2 into 10 to the power of 5. So actually they gives us 200 GPa, right? So we need to convert this value into Newton per mm square. So if we convert the 200 GPa into Newton per mm square, that value should be 2 into 10 to the power 5. So after simplifying this, we will get a value called 0.5 into 10 to the power minus 3 mm, right? So it's actually a D1. So it's not a DL. So it's a DL1. And we need to find the DL2. Okay, let us find that DL2. So similarly, the same procedure. So DL2 will be, so we are getting 1 into 10 to the power minus 3. What about strain? So we have that formula for strain. You know that change in length divided by original length. So we have already have that change in length 1 and change in length 2. So let us find strain in segment 1 for that. So we have a two-step bar, right? So from here to here it's DL1 and it's DL2. So strain 1, strain 2, so that is called. Okay, so strain 1 is 0.5 into 10 to the power minus 5. So strain has, so what is the unit of strain? Is there is any unit for strain? So strain has no unit. Why strain has no unit? Because see, these mm and these will be cancelled each other, right? So that's why strain has no unit. And hence, so we know that stress formula. So stress is stress 1 is P by A, area 1 obviously. So 200 by 200 is 1 Newton per mm square, and P by A2, so 200 divided by 100, 2 Newton per mm square. Right, so it's not a rocket science, it's a very simple problem. So we have seen an analytical method how to solve this axial tensile force. That means so we have seen that axial force applied on a cantilever bar, right, and find that change in length and stress, how much stress it actually forms, right. Let us get into that numerical method. So as I said before, we have 4 different types of numerical methods, but as I said, FEA is the most important method. So throughout the session we will only see about FEA. So these problems also solved by using FEA theories. So I said that this is solved by FEA. Okay, so this is solved by FEA, right. For that we need to understand some concept which is related to FEA, right. So what I will do here is I just have the same problem again, and it's an actual problem. So I need to convert this actual problem into a line body. So what is line body and what is elements and what is nodes, these kinds of stuffs will be covered in our FEA session, right. So don't bother about it. So I will explain everything in our upcoming sessions. So just observe what is it here, right. So if I convert this particular model into a line body, so we have 3 nodes. So what I will do here is I just separate this 2 step bar into a, one single step bar into a 2 parts. So this is my part 1 and this is my part 2, right. So here also I have 2 elements. So this is my 1 and this is my second element, right. Okay, so I have 3 junction points. So junction point 1, 2 and 3. So namely it is called as nodes. So or else you can say n1, n2 and n3. So that is called a junction point of that particular element. So element 1 and element 2, right. Hope you will understand. Let's get into that another concept. Here let us consider that elastic behavior. So what I will actually written here is I draw a linear spring over here. So this is a linear spring. See what you actually seen here is it's a linear spring. So that linear spring is fixed at one end and a force P is applied in that another side. And what is the K means? K is spring coefficient of this particular spring, and DL is the how much it actually elongated due to this force. So that is called DL, right. Why should I actually write this equation here is, see here in our problem statements, so these and these cases are similar in behavior, right. So when I have a tensile bar, so if I applied a force, it will actually elongate it, and if I remove that force, it will get back to its normal state. And similarly, so if I have a linear elastic spring and if I apply a force on that one end, so it will actually expand. So if I remove that particular force, so it get back to its original state. So both of the behaviors are similar to each other. So I can use that linear spring equation to solve these problems. So that is the ultimate concept. I can actually correlate this to different problems together, right. Right, so we will go to this next step. So let us assume from this linear spring equation. So we know that P is equal to K into DL. So actually this P is actually equal to K into how much distance it actually elongated, right. So K, so as I said before, K is that K is the spring coefficient constant, right. So K is equal to P divided by DL. So I need to find the K value. So what I will do is I just move that values from here to here, so it get back to here. So I get the value of K. So this is equation 1 and this is equation 2, right. So we know that E is equal to stress divided by strain. So that E means Young's modulus. So this is already we seen in that analytical method, right. So the same formula is applied over here, and from here, so I need to find P by DL. So P by DL is equal to AE divided by L. So I can also written this as a equation number 3. Okay, so let's find, so we have equation 1 and 2 and 3. So I can easily correlate these two equations, right? Why? Because see, equation number 3 and equation number 2, so both are p by dls. So I have p by dl here and here, so I can easily say k is equal to ae by l. So by comparing that equation number 2 and equation 3, so what I written is k is equal to ae by l. So hope you will understand how it actually came. So how k is equal to ae by l. So I can just correlate the equation 2 and 3, right? Next, so what is k? K is that coefficient of spring or stiffness of the spring. We need to find that stiffness matrix first of all. So let us explain you how FAIS actually works. So in finite element analysis, first we need to discretize the particular model, and after discretization the elements and nodes are created, and for every node, so depend upon the node counts, a stiffness matrix will be created. So after that stiffness matrix is created, so that stiffness matrix is solved by, that stiffness matrix is converted into a simultaneous equation. Those simultaneous equation is solved to know the to find that unknown variables, and after that we will have the solution. So that is actually a software executor problem, right? So similar way we have to find the same way. Okay, so applying Newton's third law using reaction forces. So how I actually find a stiffness matrix using a Newton's third law. So what I do here is I just separate that into two sessions. So this is my first segment, right? So don't confuse with this I and J term. So Newton's third law method is very easy, right? And so we have another method called I and J also. So that is also easy, but it's little bit quite hard to understand that concept, right? So apply the forces at nodal position. So we need to first find the local matrix. What is local matrix? So as I said before, so I separate the two parts, so part 1 and part 2. So we have 3 nodes over here, so node 1, n1, n2 and n3. So k1 is equal to a1 e by l. So these pointers, these forces applied on that n1 point, so nodal 1 point. So as I said before, in Newton's third law, so each and every force has an equal and opposite reaction. So a1 e by l is opposite to minus a1 e divided by l. So similarly, a1 e divided by l minus a1 e divided by l. So here it has an opposite reaction, here it has an opposite reaction. And for element 1 we have written a local stiffness matrix. Similarly, for element 2 we have also written another stiffness matrix. So these two stiffness matrices are called local stiffness matrix. Now we need to create a global stiffness matrix, right? So how can I create a global matrix? So by just comparing these two equations, so k1 and k2, so you can easily create a new stiffness matrix. See, just observe the position. So for 1 and 1, so we have a1 e l. So here also for 1 and 1, so we have a1 e divided by l, right? And for 2 and 1, for 2 and 1, for 2 and 1 we have minus a1 e divided by l. So minus a1 e divided by 1 l. And 3 and 1, so where is 3 and 1? So here we don't have 3 and 1 and 3 and 1, no. So we don't have any 3 and 1 row or columns, so any values over here, so just put it as 0 in that particular value. So if there is no value exists in that particular local stiffness matrix, put a 0 in that particular position. And similarly we need to fill all the positions which is correlating the two stiffness matrices, right? So in this position, so we have a 2 into 2, so in 2 into 2, 2 values are there. So why should I write down 2 values? Because we have a 2 to 2 here, from here to here, so 2 and 2, so here we have a value, and from here 2 and 2, so we have another value. So just add this both terms and put the value over here, right? Before that, so we need to understand that concept. So this is called global stiffness matrix, and these stiffness matrix have some properties. What is that property? So our first property is, right, so a stiffness matrix, right? Okay, stiffness matrix is always a square matrix, and it's a symmetric along diagonal, and algebraic sum of the 2 rows or 2 columns is obviously 0, right? So this is the properties of stiffness matrix. Let us check whether it is true or not. So as I said, it's a square matrix of the order of 3 into 3, right? So it's an order of 3 into 3, and it is symmetric along diagonal. See, these values, so which is similar to these values. So it's symmetrical diagonals. So if we add two rows, so 1 plus 2 or columns, 1 plus 2, these columns, that entire row and column should be a 0, right? So that is the actual properties of stiffness matrix. So let us get into that. So let us put the value from the algebraic method. So just fill up that value. So after simplification, so you will get a value. So K matrix is equal to 10 to the power of 5. So we take the 10 to the power of 5 as a common factor. So and 4 minus 4 0 something, we have that value. So again we written that linear spring equation over here. So K into pi into P vector. So actually we had a vector symbol over here also. So that is missed over here. So I just draw. So here we also we have a vector symbol, right? And as per our problem statement, so again I written this so as per our problem statement, so n1, n2, n3, so is the nodal position. So how the load is distributed? So here it is actually a fixed support. So this node is completely locked. So from here this n1 is completely locked because due to fixed support. So fixed support means all the degrees of freedom. So DOF will be 6 degrees of freedom will be logged. So there is no translation along x or y or z or rotation along or about x axis, y axis and z axis. So that is not possible over here, right? The next thing, and so we will clearly explain so what is the degrees of freedom and what is boundary condition. These will be explained in our upcoming session, so don't bother about it. And so according to that point, so n1 is not able to move anywhere, so force at n1 is obviously 0, but there is a force applied in n2 and n3, so but we don't know that. So there will be a forces there, so definitely there will be forces. And K, pi vector and P vector. Okay, let us apply that value. So we know that all the values over here. So pi is nothing but how much it actually deforms. So that deformation is actually given as a pi. So don't confuse with that pi symbol. And here, so click, just watch clearly. So that's a step over here. So how it actually happened from here to here. See, we know that a P1 is equal to 0. So that means there won't be any displacement, right? So pi is called a dl. So dl is written as pi. So these values is 0 and these also 0. So what we can easily do is we can eliminate that first row and first column, and the remaining section what we have is over here, right? After that, so it's just as a matrix multiplication. So if you multiply that each and every values, you will get a simultaneous equation. So we have a two simultaneous equation, so this one and this one. So we need to solve this equations. So if we solve that equation, a value of pi 2 is 0.5 into 10 to the power minus 3. So as you remember that in our analytical session, so we have seen that what is the DL2 value. So that is actually a 0.5 into 10 to the power minus 3. And so pi 3. So if you apply that same value in any of that one of the equation, you will get a pi 3 value also. And you need to find that d1 and d2. So pi 1 means from here and pi 2 means how much it actually deforms from here to here. So where from here to here. And what is pi 3 means how it actually elongated. So from these point to these points. So not from here to here, right? So for that dl1 means pi 2 minus pi 1 and dl2 means pi 3 minus pi 2. So if you substitute that particular values over here, so you will get the deformation value results. So these one and this one. Okay, so these are verified true. So it's actually equal. These values are equal when we compare to that analytical method, right? So our change in length is obviously equal, and we need to find that strain, right? So strain is dl divided by original length. So that is a change in length divided by original length. So obviously we get that value of 0.5 into 10 to the power minus 5 and 1 into 10 to the power minus 5. So strain has no units because both of them are mm or meter. So that will be cancelled with each other. And we need to calculating that stress. So how to calculate the stress? So it's pretty simple. So a simple procedure what we have actually used in our analytical method. So that is actually used over here. So these method is used in our analytical method. So it is quite different method while calculating the stress by using a Young's modulus value. So we already know that Young's modulus value. So if you don't know that, you probably know that what is that Young's modulus value for structural steel. It's 2 into 10 to the power 5. So we can, if you apply that value, so you can easily calculate that stress 1 and stress 2. And if you want the overall stress, you can add the both stresses. So that is also possible. And so or else you can easily find by using these formulas. So the stress 1 is equal to P by A1. So you guys are already aware of what is P and A1 and what is P2 and A2. So both methods pretty simple. So either one you can use, whatever it is easy for you, you can use it at yourself. Right. So that is all about analytical method and numerical method. So I know that so why we need to find the same problem in two different methods, and you may think that what's the same problem, but numerical method takes a lot of steps, right? But believe me, numerical method is the most easiest method to calculate a complicated problems rather than comparing to a simple problem. So for analytical method, it is very simple to find a simple problem, and so these calculations are run in the backends. So all the results are verified with each other. So both of methods are quite simple, right? So from this, what you have to learn is in numerical method there is a procedure. First, we need to discretize that model and we need to convert that elements and nodes. We need to calculate that how much elements it has, how much nodes it has. So depend upon the node, a stiffness matrix will be created. So like this, so like you've seen in this display. And that stiffness matrix is directly related to the node counts. So in our problem, we have 3 nodes, like we have nodes of n1, n2 and n3, 3 nodes. So that's why we have a 3 cross 3 matrix. See, so here we have an order of 3 cross 3. So if we have a 10 nodes, so what I will get? So 10 cross 10 matrix. Simple. Imagine if your model having 1 lakh nodes, how much stiffness matrix you will get? A 1 lakh into 1 lakh order. So obviously that is true. So that's why if you mesh that particular model as much as fine, so that calculation time will be drastically increases. So a good CE engineer or mesh engineer will create an optimum mesh. So an optimum mesh is, what is optimum mesh means? If you discretize a particular model, it has a less number of elements and less number of nodes with having a maximum number of accuracy. So that is called optimum number of meshing. So that is also possible. So we will furtherly discuss about FEA in our upcoming session. Right. So that's all about that video. So if you like the video, so please press the like button and subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. Thank you all.